I'm Heather King, 2013 scholar. If you don't know me, I also answer to Anastasia Beaverhausen. I got sober October 1st, 2016. I got sober in a 12-step program. And one of the things that I've learned was to always remain open-minded. And in that course of being open-minded, I was introduced to entheogenic medicine as a mode and modality of addiction and recovery treatment. And so today I want to talk to you about that. I've talked to some of you, and there's a whole lot of other things we could talk about, but I have 6 minutes, and I'm really trying to be respectful of Tabitha. So as we talk about in entheogenic medicine, one of the things that I do as a side hustle is I am an integration coach. So I help prepare people for psychedelic experiences, but more importantly, I help them integrate those experiences into their lives for long-lasting recovery. And so this is just kind of an introduction to that process. So one of the first things that I want to start off is language is important, words are important, right? I don't refer to this stuff as shrooms, special K, whatever else, acid, gonna go drop some acid. No, that's not, even the term psychedelics is not really a good term to describe what these medicines are. So what are entheogens? From the Greek etymology, en meaning within, theos meaning God, gen meaning produced or generated. So it means to connect to the divine within you. It's already there. If you know anything about addiction, addiction is a very isolating disease. It makes you feel alone and disconnected. In the terms of modality, some of the most, this is not an all exhaustive list. These are just some of the most notable in the space right now. So with plant medicine, we have ayahuasca, psilocybin mushrooms, the iboga root, synthesized into ibogaine, N-DMT, 5-MeO-DMT, which comes from the bufu frog, LSD, MDMA, and ketamine. Entheogens, I think it's really important to understand, these are not your typical drugs, okay? They're generally not addictive. They're not toxic in their pure forms, and they do not numb any feelings. If you've ever used alcohol the way I used alcohol, or any other drugs have a tendency to numb your feelings. Entheogens do the exact opposite. They open the doors of perception into your life. They enhance all the feelings, particularly empathy and compassion, which we need, especially as suffering addicts and alcoholics. We lose that. They're pattern interrupters. And when they're used as a psychoactive sacrament, right? When they're used and held as sacred, they can have transformative effects. So in the space of addiction treatment, iboga, ibogaine, and ketamine are primarily used in the space of opiate addiction. And they're incredibly, they work. That's all I can say. So how they work, they aid in, especially iboga, aids in cravings and withdrawal symptoms. Withdrawing can kill you if you don't know, and it's a very painful process. Ketamine especially, not only does it work in interrupting, and both of those bond to the opioid receptors that are already in your brain, right? So one of the side effects of ketamine is that it eases depression symptoms over a long period of time, right? And then LSD. How many of you guys are familiar with who Bill Wilson is? Okay. Bill Wilson is the founder of AA, and at 20 years sober, that man discovered LSD. And he talked about having a spiritual experience similar to the one that he had when he first got sober. And he chased that spiritual experience for 20 years. And it wasn't until LSD that he finally felt relief from depression. It wasn't until 20 years sober and the use of LSD where he finally felt relief from depression, even though he worked those 12 steps to the best of his ability. So we're talking transformative experiences for people. I mentioned that addiction is isolating. And I heard in a meeting years ago that connection is the opposite of addiction. And connection has saved my life. Connection to people in this room has saved my life more often than not. And so that's what these empathy engines do, is they connect you first to yourself, connect you to empathy and compassion, which allow you to connect to other people. And when you can build a community, you're less likely to fall back into relapse. But the most important part, and I'm probably running out of time, is integration. And this is what I do, okay? So the process of integration means to make whole again. And this is the substance, right? The entheogenic experience itself, sitting in medicine, is great, but that's the easy part. It is the easy part. The hard part is taking the things that you've learned in that experience and applying it to your daily life, taking advantage of that neuroplasticity, right? These new pathways, and forming and creating new habits. That's the hard part. And most people don't know how to do that without somebody sharing how they did it. So the process of integration looks like you receive the information, right? So you receive the information in the experience. Whether it's mushrooms, ayahuasca, iboga, whatever, you receive all of this information and it's overwhelming. And then you get out of it and you're like, okay, now what? I'm scared. That's when you begin to process the information that you've received. And then once you've started to process it with another human being, then you can start to take action. And what does that action look like? That action looks like meditation, moving your body, finding new habits. Once you start taking all those actions, you begin to release your traumas. You begin to release your burdens. You begin to step into this new life that you get to have and create however you want it. And then you practice these things daily. Daily. I still practice all of the things I learned in a 12-step program because that's how I have to live my life. But that's all part of self-mastery. And that's how we become whole, useful human beings. It's not enough to just get sober. Anybody who's been around somebody who's just dry, who just quit using the substances but didn't do anything to change their life, they're miserable. And it's hard. And that's the time that you want to kill yourself. That's the time you want to relapse. That's the time you want to go in a hole and pretend you don't want to exist anymore, because it's easier to be drunk than to be miserable. So in this process, we're creating the ability for people to have long, lasting, meaningful sobriety. So with that, here are some resources. I made a QR code so that anybody could access these slides and these resources. But I went about this whole thing wrong. You're supposed to be able to look at it from your phone. So anyways, with that, these are just this, and this, again, not an exhaustive list. This is just some of the stuff in the space that's really got a whole bunch of quantitative research from people who are actual scientists. I'm just a drunk. But from people who are scientists who have done studies on addiction treatment. And so with that, Tabitha says we have room for 2 questions.
First off, congratulations and thank you. For someone who is thinking about undergoing this type of medication, I'm sure you have lots of suggestions, but what is the one thing that you would say to someone to prepare them for the experience that they're about to have?
The best thing I can tell you is to be open-minded and be curious. There's a lot of people refer to a lot of things as bad trips or bad experiences, and I simply don't personally buy into that. I think every experience can be tough, right? It can be hard to see your pain, and it can be hard to sit with that. But it's there for your highest good, and it's there for your healing. And if you don't have an integration coach, because I know what you're going through, if you don't have an integration coach, I will do that with you for free. As a client, you should not do this. You should not do this alone. Nobody should do this alone. Oh God, I don't have the microphone. I don't.
Brian Burgess, 2016 Tillman Scholar. First, you're not just a drunk, you're Heather King. You are an incredible human being. So my question to you is, you touched on many of the psychedelics. I guess, what are the applications of MDMA?
So MDMA, I don't personally have experience with MDMA, but I do have a lot of friends. My reference is for people in the soft community who have gone into ceremony with or have undergone MDMA therapy, specifically in the role of marriage counseling. MDMA has a way of reconnecting you to that heart-centered space. Like, again, drugs and alcohol and trauma shut off our ability to connect to ourselves and to each other. And so MDMA is really a beautiful medicine in the sense of it brings those senses to the surface and allows a couple to reconnect with the love that they already have for each other. And it's also really good in sexual trauma. It may sound counterintuitive if you have experience with like the street versions of MDMA. It may seem counterintuitive, but it actually can reconnect you to that safety within your own body, and that's really, really important when processing sexual trauma.